Would you like some coffee?
If you're having some.
I am. Come on in. Why don't you make yourself at home? Just, have a seat.
You get a chance to use it?
Well, I felt a lot safer having it. Oh, the milk went bad while I was in jail.
Black's fine.
Cool.
Would you care to hang on to it for a while? It wouldn't be legal, but it makes you feel better, I guess.
Well, thanks. I got one now.
You went out this morning and bought a gun?
What? I didn't hear you.
You went out this morning and bought a gun?
Well, let's say I got one now, okay?
Somebody loan it to you?
Yeah. All right. We're on. Might be a little black. Would you like to hear some music?
Sure.
Cool. I couldn't wait to get home last night and wash the gel out of my hair.
Looks nice.
Thanks.
You never got into the whole CD revolution?
Oh, I got a few, but I can't afford to start all over again. I've invested too much time and money in my albums.
Yeah, but you can't get new stuff on records.
I don't get new stuff that often.
Hi, I'm Mike.
And I'm Dan.
Welcome back to 15-Minute Film Fanatics. You know how this works. Dan and I watch movies separately, and we talk about them for the first time on the show. This time, I think we stumbled into a mutual Mike-Dan favorite, but maybe one that you, Dan, haven't seen in a while. Jackie Brown, directed by Quentin Tarantino and starring Pam Grier. This is, just to tip my hand, this is my favorite Tarantino.
Let's go. I am a big fan of this film. I'm a big fan of Elmore Leonard. I saw Jackie Brown the night it came out, and when it said based on the novel by Elmore Leonard, I clapped in the movies, like Charles Foster Kane clapping at the end of the opera. I was so excited. And I want to preface this by saying, a couple little fun things. First of all, I have a wedding present from Quentin Tarantino. When I got married, one of my students tracked him down in Hollywood, wrote him a letter, and he sent me a signed copy of the script for Reservoir Dogs. So that was kind of cool. And I also have a letter I wrote to Elmore Leonard because I've been reading his stuff forever. And when his book Freaky Deaky came out, which is a terrific book and a bad movie, I just wrote him a funny letter and said, "So did you ever dance the Freaky Deaky?" And he wrote me back this really cool handwritten letter that said, he stopped dancing when he stopped drinking. The next book is Kill Shot. I'm really grateful for loyal fans. And he signed it, "Take it easy, Elmore." Like, what a cool thing. Take it easy, Elmore. So I love this film. I've probably seen it twice since it came out in the movies, but I only watched it again because you said we should do it for the podcast. And I am so glad you did. This is my favorite Elmore Leonard adaptation. It was his favorite too. He's one of the producers. This and Out of Sight. Have you seen Out of Sight?
No.
Oh, it's great. Steven Soderbergh, George Clooney, Jennifer Lopez. That's like the second great Elmore Leonard film. And that's what I want to start by asking you about. I want to talk about this movie as an adaptation. Now, this is based upon the novel Rum Punch by Elmore Leonard. So because I knew I was going to watch it again, I read Rum Punch. You could read it in a weekend. It's terrific. And I start to think about the challenge of adapting books to films, right? So if you think of people like, David Lean made Great Expectations and Oliver Twist, we love those, right? Victor Fleming did, I was thinking of like Gone with the Wind, The Wizard of Oz, Dr. Jekyll. You think of Kubrick making The Shining. You think of Spielberg making Jaws, right? All of these great adaptations, they either have to adjust stuff or take stuff out or change things. And sometimes that's for the better. Like The Shining is a better movie than a book. Jaws is a better movie, I think, than a book. So I started to think to myself, all right, what's the gold standard of movie adaptations of a book? And the one that I kept going back to in my head was The Maltese Falcon. So if I said to you, why is the Maltese Falcon? Because I know you've read the book and you've seen the movie a million times, which we haven't done yet, oddly. If I said to you, what makes the Maltese Falcon such a great adaptation? What would you say off the top of your head?
Dashiell Hammett, I think, had film in mind or on the brain because, of course, that was the most popular medium at the time. I think it's why it makes a good radio play, too, because you can easily hear how easily it could go into a radio. Because it's structured as an accumulation of information from one guy's perspective from the beginning to the end, it has a natural 3-act structure with all the reversals that go along with it, right? So you identify with one person, you tend to know what he knows. He knows it maybe only half a second before you know it, and he's in great danger, which adds to suspense. And so I think it's structure. It's got a lot of more going on than just the detective plot, but it's structured in such a way that it would be easily breakable into the chunks that you'd need to make a good movie.
Yeah, and of course that's the third attempt to film The Maltese Falcon. John Huston got it right, and it's John Huston's first movie, which is unbelievable. One thing you may not know is that John Huston wrote the screenplay by literally having the book open next to him at a typewriter and just typing the novel as a screenplay. So you could hold up the novel and it goes word for word on the screen. Also, John Huston said his big thing was it's like 90 something, like he said a movie is something like 95% casting, 3% script and 2% everything else. So the Maltese Falcon, of course, is perfectly cast. I mean, you can't imagine somebody else playing Sam besides Humphrey Bogart. You can't imagine somebody else as Casper Gutman. You can go through the whole, even, Elijah Cook Jr. as Wilmer. Like every single part is so well cast. So I think both of those things you see going on in here is that Quentin Tarantino was so faithful to the source material and to the whole feel of reading an Elmore Leonard book. He didn't want to monkey around with it. It's perfectly cast. The only change he made was changing the lead's character. In the books, her name is Jackie Burke. And Jackie Brown goes along with Pam Grier's career and stuff like that. And of course, he changed the race of Jackie Burke, but it's all to the good. It makes a more rich experience, I think. And it's such reverence for the source material that it's exactly like reading the novel, but somebody imagining that novel for you.
Yeah, and I think that Tarantino is very inspired by Pam Grier. I think it's no surprise that she's amused for him, and that's why she, this whole movie
for her, yeah,
right, exactly. This movie was made for her, and I think that she gives one of the best performances of her career. She certainly makes the movie, although I will say that there's a wonderful ensemble cast.
Oh yeah,
in this movie,
like the Maltese Falcon.
Well, exactly. Like I think there's it's not a one-to-one correspondence, but Chris Tucker has kind of like the Peter Lorre pop in and pop out, like yeah.
Yeah, well, it's great also that Pam, like if you said who are the leads of the movie, like who's the movie about, it's about Pam Grier and Robert Forster, right? Like those are it's about Jackie Brown and Max Cherry. Now, of course, you have bigger celebrities in other parts like De Niro and Samuel Jackson, but what's so great is I love watching this movie because Pam Grier and Robert Forster, they're interesting looking. Like she's not just like good looking, she's like interesting looking. Like they look like real people. And isn't it great that after this film came out, like we didn't start to see them in every other movie? Because that's what happened to Travolta after Pulp Fiction, right? John Travolta was in every other movie you saw. These two, like they did this movie and they're unbelievable, and they kind of like faded away from back into movie kind of like on the DL or something.
The movie orbits Pam Grier like a sun, and the question is, could you have alternating scenes with Robert De Niro and Robert De Niro not cast the same kind of gravity? It takes actually a lot of talent from the actor, from the director, and from the script to do that, right? It's like, I want to be in this movie. You can imagine De Niro saying, and you can imagine other people saying, this movie's not for you to take over. And he says, I'm not going to take over. Just put me in the movie. Just trust me.
Right. That's great because, and of course, even when De Niro's in the movie, how long is it before he even talks? Because the first like hour, he just like goes around, like nods at what Samuel Jackson says. Like it's perfect how much he underplays it.
Yeah, he doesn't say anything, and of course it's Samuel L. Jackson being Samuel L. Jackson
from the first scene, right?
Chris Tucker plays a very Chris Tucker part, which is fantastic. The only person who oversells it, but I think in a great way, and I'm surprised that their gum didn't actually get their own credit, is Michael Keaton.
Michael Keaton, yeah, and his squeaky leather jacket. I mean, going back to this idea about Pam Grier, the thing, and she's only, of course, when you watch it, she's in the whole opening credit sequence going to the flight, but then she's not in it for half an hour. That speaks to, I think, the other things we like about this movie. This is Quentin Tarantino's third movie, right? So Reservoir Dogs comes on the scene. It's all adrenaline. It's all forward momentum. Then Pulp Fiction, it's all these great twists with the narrative. But I think this movie is special because it's all about like real human beings. And like it takes its time, like that whole opening credit sequence, right? That in another director would have said, no, hurry it up. But it's supposed to like kind of mimic the feel of these 70s movies, which I think, by the way, parenthetically is getting a little tired. Like I'm sick of seeing like the 70s fonts and everything, but here it really pulls off the feel of watching like a long movie on a Saturday afternoon. And this whole idea that she's a real person, It reminded me very much of another film we like very much, which is No Country for Old Men.
You're with Jackie Brown as Sheriff Bell.
No, no, with Jackie Brown as Moss, right? With somebody presented with the opportunity to get out of a loser lifestyle and say, here's your chance. There's literally a box of money. What are you going to do? And how would you respond? But I think it even does a better, I mean, they're different kind of films that do different kind of things, but this does a better job because Moss is already like a superhero. Remember, he's like, he can swim across the river and fight the pit bull and stuff like that. He's already like way unlike the average viewer. But she's like, in her 40s. She's like a regular person. She's like, I'm not going back to jail. I'm not going to have him kill me. And like, so the whole point of the movie is, well, what would you do if you were given that test? You're given this chance to get out. What would you do? And it's how she does it.
And she does steal Max's gun. So I think one of the interesting things about this movie, especially watching it from the perspective of 2023, is that there's a lot of 90s nostalgia for the 70s. I think one of the things that I read was that when Pam Grier came in to quote unquote audition for this movie, she saw a poster for one of her movies on Quentin Tarantino's wall, and expecting to do some scene or to talk to him about the movie, he just wanted to talk about her movies. Tarantino does this a lot, right? He uses some of the gestures of genre in later movies, but trying to fulfill what those genres cannot be about. And so, right, it's as though it's a longing for 70s blaxploitation and the gestures of that as an era or a genre, but to say, I don't want to do the same things that those movies did. I want to take out maybe what's negative about those movies and leave the gestures of the movie, but do something radically different instead, which is a statement I think that we'll get into about pettiness of life or escape.
Yeah, and he does that. That's his MO, right? That's what Inglourious Bastards is. It's the gesture towards the Dirty Dozen.
Right.
Reservoir Dogs is the gesture towards the caper film. The Hateful Eight was a gesture towards the Western. I mean, there's all these kinds of he's that's a good word for him, gesturing towards these genres that he assumes you love and that he's going to now play with.
Right, but I think the plan is to do one better, and so I think that's what makes this perfect casting. Because it's as though he's saying that the people who had you in their movies didn't know what they have, but I do. And so, what he's trying to show is that he has an understanding of what actors are capable of that the studio doesn't, or that the system doesn't. I think that if you had asked him what he was working on, he was trying to rescue some of the ideas of 70s film, and it's as though his brain is cluttered the same way that Jackie Brown's apartment is cluttered, right, with her vinyl. And he says, don't you have any CDs? And she says, it was just too late for me to start over.
So welcome back. In part two, we talk about our favorite moments, or moments we think reflect the film as a whole. Mike, what's yours?
I really like the scene where Samuel L. has Jackie Brown cornered. We've already seen what he's done to Chris Tucker. Chris Tucker's dead in a trunk somewhere, and he's trying to clean up his operation by bailing out the people that are in jail and killing them so he can't rat them out. What he thinks is going to happen is that he's going to slowly strangle Jackie Brown and leave her where she is. What he finds out is that she's stolen a gun and has it pointed at his groin. And so that this whole thing is going to get flipped on him in a way that he doesn't expect, but in fact, he's the one that set it up. And I think it's not only a microcosm of the whole movie, but I think, as we were talking about in part one, Jackie Brown and the other characters seem to inhabit this petty kingdom. And in fact, the register of the movie from the point of view of the audience is supposed to be somehow lower. It's supposed to be a seedier neighborhood than you live in. It's supposed to be a pettier crime than you would imagine that you were engaged in. And it's one of those moments where Jackie Brown breaks out as a heroic figure, because her activity starts to break away from your activity. I don't know how we would all deal with being closed in by somebody who wanted to strangle us to death, but probably having the presence of mind to steal the gun and then wait calmly for the right time to reveal it, right? to allow him to get closer. It's one of the moments where you realize who Jackie Brown is in this movie. And I think part of the way that the movie works is allowing you to think of it as this petty kingdom, and then letting the characters break out and reveal themselves. So it's the first time that you admire her steel, her resolve. It's where the movie kind of reveals what it's going to be as it rolls on. I think for the first half an hour convinces you that it's Samuel L. Jackson as kind of the apex predator killing everyone, and then you're going to find out who the apex predator is. And I think it's a wonderful reveal. It's a wonderfully written scene, and I don't think it can go any other way without altering the meaning of the movie.
Yeah, she's great when she says, "I want $100,000. If I'm in there for another year, I want another $100,000." Because you watch her and you're like, "Whoa!" You know what? Actually, I take it back what I said in part one. She kind of is like Moss there.
That's what I mean. Is that but you're not set up to think that way. It's a slow reveal,
right,
of who she is.
Like everything in this movie is slow. Like, didn't you like again? Like I said this about Heaven's Gate. Didn't you wish this movie were like 12 hours long?
There's a lot of world building in the movie, and I think that that's done through repetitions of different scenes in different places, right? Because she goes to the same bar all the time.
Right.
They're in the same DA office all the time. They're in his his bail bondsman's office, and so it builds a neighborhood. It makes you want to inhabit that neighborhood. The neighborhood has a very consistent soundtrack, and then you're in the neighborhood. But I think that for Jackie Brown, you're exactly right. They set up Moss by showing you that he's tough, that he's ex-special forces, the way he's, hunting the deer or whatever. You like all that. They want you to underestimate Jackie Brown. They count on you underestimating Jackie Brown, but that's the one thing that you should never do, right? Because she's not stuck in there with you. You're stuck in there with her.
And no one as cool as her, with a name as cool as her, by the way, is going to be easy to deal with.
You're even set up that way when she gets nailed the first time, and they say that that's the least that you could possibly make after being in your industry 18 years or whatever it is, right? So again, they want the register of the film to be operating lower than the level of the audience, but then you find out who you're really dealing with. And I think that sense of admiration builds over the film, and when it finally hits its crux and it can't go any further, the movie ends immediately.
So my moment is when Max Cherry leaves her that voicemail, the long, awkward voicemail about how to get back in touch with him, which is like every guy who's ever left a voicemail for a woman has the same kind of because you're in the middle of leaving the message and you realize how stupid you sound, but you can't take it back. So it's when he calls, it says, "Hi, I'd really like to see you again. And here's my number, and here's my office number, and here's my beeper number." And then he tells her how to actually use the beeper. Like, you're going to want to hit 2, then pound, then 3, 2, 8. She's walking around the apartment. So why do I love that? I love that because all of a sudden you said you're in this world, right? And now you've veered into this kind of it's a crime movie, right? But now there's a real relationship going on in here, and somebody who's really kind of stuck on her. And that's so charming to see. What I love about the opening scene with her on the people mover is that, she's a stewardess, right? She's got no kind of fixed place. She's always literally up in the air, right? And now she has a way to fly away to some place and get out of this neighborhood and get away from Samuel Jackson. They're both trying to break out. And I just love the romance between her and Max Cherry as it goes on and builds. And there's all these little gestures before. You said the word gestures, like when he buys the Delphonics cassette and you see him go into the mall to buy it. And Samuel Jackson's like, "You like the Delphonics?" He's like, "They're pretty good." That's all he can say is, "They're pretty good," right? And I love it because as he gets closer to her, he decides he's not going to be a bail bondsman anymore. I got to get out of this. She wants to get out of this whole thing. She's been running the money for Samuel Jackson, right? And she says to him at one point, "Are you scared of me?" And he says, "A little bit." And he is a little bit scared of her. And we'll talk about the ending. So I think that as the $500,000 is kind of her temptation, how am I going to handle this? She's that to him. She is Max Cherry's box of $500,000, because he finds himself getting drawn into this thing. And he's like, "I could actually have this. This actually could work. I could be happy with this woman." And they're both kind of nervous about it. And they both require a lot of scheming. Now, her scheming is really complicated to do the money swap and everything. But he's kind of trying to work the same kind of thing. If I get this thing, I could be happy.
And I think that part of it is we're made to assume about him that the kinds of people that leave those voicemails are lame. But what you find out about him is that he's loyal.
He's
and
totally not
strong
lame. Yeah.
and willing to put it on the line and not afraid to pick people up from prison at at
Yeah.
2 a.m. and drive them
That's
where
my
they
job.
need to go.
That's my job.
Right. You're made to think that he's square in a specific way, and the movie could not be constructed to make him seem squarer. But it again, just with him, it seems to play on assumptions of strength and weakness, and then to see strength in interesting places. But the movie is built on these assumptions. It knows that you're coming in with these assumptions, and it plays with them before it reverses them beautifully.
Because he looks like everyone's 7th grade phys ed teacher. That's exactly when he's walking around the mall when they're doing the money drop and he's got that blazer on. And how about when he even tells her, I didn't like the way my hair was falling out, so I did something about it. Like, he just calls attention to what he's like, exactly where he is in his life.
I saw it 2 weeks ago or so now, so I don't remember clearly, but I feel like there's a 10-second insert shot of him watching a movie alone on a Saturday at the mall, which is that should be just his poster for the entire movie. Welcome back. So in part 3, we always talk about the title or the ending or the key takeaways. I think we got the title. So Dan, what do you have on the ending?
It's reminiscent of Casablanca. It's reminiscent of real life. I think when you get to the money, when you get to the end of this film, you are so rooting for her to get away with it. You just want her to get away with it. It looks like she's going to. She has a moment of doubt when she sees herself in the dressing room mirror. That's an A+ moment where she's like, am I really going to walk out of here and risk my life with Ardell and do this kind of thing? She comes out. She comes to see Max Cherry. They kiss. They step away. They kiss again. They step away. He watches her go out to the car. And the whole time you're like, go out there. Go out to the car. Like, you quit. Like, what is your problem? And he turns around, and then, as you remember, the shot gets very blurry. It kind of like blurs him out. And then we get her in the car singing across 110th Street. So what's great about that is I think that it's a movie without a movie ending, because the movie is really about her breaking free from everything. And so she can't be, it would be too cute if the two of them went around and then had like, fun capers or went on the run or something like that. But I think the movie dramatizes so strongly what he's thinking there when he watches her. She's got her blazer on, her jeans. Her hair looks great. She's getting into the car and he's watching her like, yeah, that's not like, this isn't a movie. This wouldn't work. It wouldn't. And he just kind of fades away literally before your eyes. And she's kind of sad about that. But then as she starts singing the song, she kind of gets back into it. And she's like, yeah, I'm going to be okay when I go to Spain.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things about cute endings is that it's not cute for the audience, because what happens is there's a gesture towards a continuing universe, but you don't get to go. And so I think that one of the things that makes Casablanca work, or the end of this movie work, is that there is no sense. The sense of the continuing universe is a personal universe, and there's no invite. There's no invite for me to continue as a viewer, and there's no invite for Max, really to.
Well, she invites him,
but he knows he can't go.
Right.
He knows he's not going to go.
Why isn't he going to go? What do you think? Why won't he go? Because you're like me, right? I'm sure you're watching the thing. Your stomach is going, just go with her.
Because it is who he is. Because the beautiful thing is they don't dramatize it while he's sitting at his desk. If you remember, his phone goes off, and it's somebody whose son has been arrested.
Yeah, right. It's the whole thing again, right?
And so right. What's actually happening though, and the beautiful thing is I think it's the mom who's on the phone, right?
Yeah.
While she's walking away. And so there's somebody who needs help and needs to be, his job is to be their usher. He ushers people out of bad situations or across situations to the other bank, and that's his job. And so he does his job. And so the question is, when he was with Jackie, how much of it was that it was perceived that she needs somebody to get to the other side of this situation? And I think that everybody over assumes that it's personal connection or personal need, but I think his personal need is to be who he is, right? You can't go without losing who you are, and she can't take him without losing who she is.
But he also hangs up the phone. He says he starts doing his Max Cherry bail, but yes, that's a very serious crime, because we've heard him say that over and over in the film. He said he's done like 15,000 bails, right? And he just says, can I call you back like in a half an hour? So he's not going to leave it. But I wonder if it's like he just didn't have the courage to get into that car. It would take a lot of it takes a lot of guts to walk away from who you are and your everything you know, right?
Sure, but sometimes it takes a lot of guts to recognize who you are. And so, right, and not to make the wrong decision, right? It's one thing to listen to buy a Delphonics cassette, and it's another to become one with the song, which is where the character Jackie Brown goes.
Yeah, yeah.
When the movie ends and how it ends, right? We don't see her get on the plane. We don't see her arrive in Spain. So I think that what this film says is there's a certain even geographical location, right, in which the eye of the film can go around. And so she's approaching the limit. She's approaching essentially like the horizon of where the movie can follow. And she goes through and we can't go
She's
through.
Dave
And
Bowman going through the monolith at the end of 2001.
well, so right, so when she's driving, we're not in a familiar scene. And so that the scene would lack something. So imagine the scene without the song, right? And she's not sitting in her favorite bar or in any of the scenes that we've seen, or in the complex, where Ordell kills the guy. He drives around to the other vacant lot. And so it's only dramatized by the song, because once you're getting out, I don't necessarily know if she's going to cruise around and listen to that song ever again.
Yeah,
right?
that Bobby Womack song is about her, right? I mean, like, it's all about
being, what's a stewardess? It's somebody who assists other people who are on journeys, right?
Right.
And this time she's not flying as a stewardess. This time she's on her way to the airport to fly as a passenger and to not come back. And so I think that to inhabit the song for longer than another director would hold the song is first a replacement for the visual landscape, because we're getting away from the familiar visually, so you need something that's double familiar on the soundtrack, but because she's leaving it behind.
So it's a movie about somebody breaking out, which is like a big theme in movies, right? Somebody wants to get out of the movie they're in.
Well, she's going to do one last job, and that's one last job.
Yeah, one last job is every other movie we've seen. Yeah, exactly. And we're going to pull you out of retirement. I'm going to do one last caper, one last heist. She's going to do one last job and get away with it, which she does, which is another interesting thing, right? There's no catch at the end. Like, she doesn't get, there's nothing to see. Like, she got away clean with the money, and she actually did something. And it's like a fantasy film in that sense, that when you watch it, like, what would it be like to break out of your life and really go to another place and start over? It's like, again, like Max Cherry, people talk about that all the time. If I could do it again, if I had a briefcase of money. And so this movie's about somebody that actually does it, and how hard that is to do. It's hard for her to do it. And it looks like it's too hard for Max to do it.
Ostensibly, he's going to call his customer back, and he's going to get on with his life. And so I think that what Jackie Brown is saying by going away is, if I could do my life over, there are things I would do differently. And what Max Cherry's saying is, if I could do my life over, it would probably be pretty much the same. And they're both
Which is sad, because he says he has that revelation when he was sitting in that dark house waiting for the guy to come home. And he just sat there in the dark saying, this guy might kill me. Like, what am I doing putting my life on the line? Like, it makes him, the whole plot makes him think about his own mortality. And it, like, what am I doing? Like, bailing other people out of jail. How come I don't do anything for me? And then he has a chance and he can't do it. I mean, that's like, I'm not like, quote unquote, criticizing the character. I just think that's a very human thing, that he couldn't go all the way.
I think 110th Street is a little bit different for Max Cherry than it is for Jackie Brown. I think that one thing that the film plays with, it ultimately has to acknowledge, which is that it's tolerable for him to stay, and it may not be tolerable for her to stay. And they're coming from a different situation that ends in a different conclusion, right. because the thing about the movie is that even though he's personally a little intimidated by her, because she has some power over him to shake his life up. He's certainly no coward, right? He stares down, right? He stares down Ordell. He runs the end of the movie perfectly. He does wait, in the dark alone for Ordell, right? So he pulls off the Jackie Brown move, right? Of, you got to kind of let the bull run at you and then move at the right moment, right? There is grace under pressure from both of them. I just think it's a different talent to both of them. The song means a different thing, right? To her, the song means her life, but to him, the song means her.
Thanks for listening, everybody. We hope you enjoyed our conversation about Jackie Brown. Follow us on Twitter at 15MINFilm. Also follow us on
Letterboxd.
Letterboxd and let us know what you want us to watch next. That was a lot of fun, Mike. Great pick.
I love that movie.